Mike, welcome to the Take Flight podcast.
Man, thank you for having me, man. Pleasure.
Thank you for having me, mate.
Yeah.
We're in this is your temporary living room.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. So I've been we were saying earlier with Jamal, training in Brixton.
Yeah.
You go down there sometimes?
Yeah. I love those guys on there, man. Ben is amazing. You know what he's kind of put together for the guys over there, but then what he does as well, he's a camera wizard as well. So we do some work with him there. So yeah, it's a great team down there.
Nice. And you were saying you've been training today already? But was that
here? Yeah. It's been intense. Again, obviously with what's going on, training has kind of got me through, and fortunately we've been allowed to continue training through this time. Our gym's been classed as an elitist gym, so only the guys that are like professionals that are actually training to, perform later are the ones that are still able to train. But it's a breath of fresh air every day. But it's been intense.
Yeah.
But good for us.
How much have you been training then?
It's non-stop. So usually twice a day, depending. Obviously, when we're getting closer, the sessions are a bit more intense, but shorter.
Yeah.
And my legs are feeling it. They're the ones screaming. It'd be like, it's only when you have to do simple stuff. You're walking up the stairs to go somewhere, you're just like, wow, there's a lot of stairs here.
So sitting on the toilet one for me. Can't get back up.
I'm telling you, man, you just enjoy the toilet.
So what, specifically, and if you could talk a little bit about the fight that's coming up as well.
Yeah.
So what specifically are you doing? Like today, what were they actually having you do?
We did a lot of fitness. Again, a bit more shorter rounds. It's about kind of high intensity, but in shorter spaces. I did some sparring today as well. I probably got one more session of sparring, and it's more, as we're closing in on our opponent, it's more specific to the opponent I'm going to be fighting, which is Derek Anderson. On May 5th, on May 7th, and we as a bit further away from the fight, you're almost allowed to get away with mistakes. When I say mistakes, it's almost trying things during your spar, and then us figuring out whether we don't want to use that. Yeah, we can use that. Yeah, that's good. Let's tighten that up a bit. And obviously now we're getting closer to it. I have to execute everything that's specific to this guy. So me throwing anything wayward is like, no, cut, do it again. So you just want it to be drilled into your your subconscious. So when I get in there, it's not me thinking about anything. I already know what to expect, and I already know how, the movement that I need to kind of look for, or the openings that I need to look for, the openings I need to create. And yeah, it's just very detailed stuff now. And then obviously being able to be fit enough to do that as well.
That's interesting, because then when you hear about fighters whose opponent changes at the last minute, like kind of the last couple of weeks, you've been really specific training.
Yeah, a lot of people with those kind of last minute changes think it's only it's beneficial for the person that has been training for that long. So obviously, yes, in terms of fitness, depending on where they are in the camp, but most of us train throughout anyway. Maybe not as intense, but most of us train throughout. So their fitness should be relatively okay, and then that last couple of weeks is just a case of them just getting their fitness up. But for us, again, it's just completely changing everything. So yes, we are fit and ready, but if they're a very different style fighter, it makes it a bit more complicated. So you got to change a lot, and all these habits that you've just created, you got to try and break down in that, let's say a couple of weeks out from the fight, you got to try and completely turn around and change. So it's difficult for both sides.
Are you looking forward to the fight?
Oh man, I can't wait to get back in there. I love being under the lights. I love putting on a show. That's just kind of like part of my personality that just shines through my fighting style. Yeah. So yeah, anytime I get to fight, I'm excited. I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Can we go back to, well, tell me if I'm right, first of all. From my research, you had 9 siblings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So under my dad, he had 7.
Yeah.
And my mum adopted 3 later. So for me, I got quite a few. There's quite a few of us.
Yeah. So how many would be in the household at one time?
It was weird because my elder siblings had moved to America. So they're over there. So again, that's another reason why I'm always excited to go over to America and fight, because I get to see them directly after. And I'm usually over there like 3-4 times a year. And because of what's going on, I haven't had a chance to see them. So that's kind of making this fight even more exciting, because it's almost like a celebration straight afterwards. I get to go and see my family again. So yeah, some of them are over there, some of them are over here, but we're not all in the same household. But we're in contact with each other all the time, speak to each other all the time. We're very close.
Amazing. Like I've got a younger brother. He's my best friend. Like, what did it do for you having that many siblings?
For me, it was great because just every weekend, although my mum and dad weren't together, we were obviously spending a lot of time with them. They were very great as co-parents. So I get to go and see my siblings every weekend. That was just a thing that we, I know I'm going to go and see them. And then we train together. So that's why, for me, kickboxing, when I was doing it from young, meant so much, because it was something that I was doing with people that I loved and care about. So I've always been really good with anything like body movement wise. So other sports I've picked up and done really well at, and just never, kind of like jack of all trades, I never really stuck at anything outside of like the kickboxing, because it just meant so much. I even remember my dad used to tell me, like, no, none of you guys have to fight or compete. Don't think I'm forcing you to fight. We have to train. So training was like school. So that's a non-negotiable. You have to train, but you don't have to fight. And he'd always tell us, like, just randomly just throw it in there. And we're like, we love fighting. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, no one's complaining over here. So, martial arts has always been a part of my life. And again, surrounded by my loved ones, so I love it.
Yeah. So you carried that with you still today? Yeah.
So again, a lot of my siblings, so my younger brother, Kalon, he still trains and coaches. So he kind of went down the road, kind of that route of more coaching and stuff. And he'll come down to the London Street Gym and stuff every now and again, and put his work to the test. And he always shocks people, man, because he's really good. And my older brother as well actually started a gym in America. My sister's still training. She actually trains at American Top Team, but not to fight.
Okay.
Just to kind of stay in shape. But it's just in us to just kind of stay in shape. And my brother's now more kind of drifted to like basketball again, more to stay in shape. And my younger siblings used to do it, but then they're now rugby. And my sister's kind of a bit more of a creative, so she's into kind of like photography and stuff as well now. So everyone's kind of, but our base has always been like the kickboxing.
Yeah, a talented household though.
Yeah. But it's good. Like we always say, it's a lot of people kind of misunderstand like learning martial arts at such a young age, in terms of they're like, oh yeah, no, but my son or my daughter's a bit too aggressive, I don't want to give it to them. And I say, like, I think it's I believe it's Sweden or Switzerland somewhere, they actually give their children knives and stuff at a very young age and teach them how to use it as a tool. And then they have the lowest knife crime later on, because they don't associate knives with an attacking weapon. You see what I mean? Like, you've actually trained them to understand that this is a tool that we use for XYZ over here. And I think it's the same thing. We're showing them, you're not just giving them tools to punch and kick somebody else, but also giving them the respect and the discipline and just so many, like even the social skills that you get that come with learning martial arts. And for me, that's what's important about, I'm massively trying to push to get like martial arts and stuff in a school system, because I think it does help. You learn so much, and it does help you with going into heading into life later. And it's not about just the attacking and the defending. Yes, it's great to be able to defend yourself, and it's not just, people think you're just giving a weapon to somebody that's crazy. No, I think you learn so much about yourself when you do it.
So interesting, because it's almost learning the right time to use it, the right time to have a fight, which a lot of the messages that come from like martial arts is it's in the gym. Right. Unless it has to be outside of the gym. Exactly.
Yeah.
My parents put me into martial arts at a very young age for the same thing. I think mostly just to get rid of me for an hour and a half. But like all that pent up energy is got to go somewhere as well. And I suppose as a parent, I've just had my first child, a daughter. She's 9 months now. But
congrats.
Thanks, mate. That tires me out as well. But I guess part of it is you want them to be able to look after themselves if something happens.
Yes, 100%. It's more, a lot of people, again, we used to have to learn self-defense training and stuff as well. And I used to take seminars for that as well. A lot of times attackers will unintentionally, and again, a lot of times subconsciously, will look at certain mannerisms and deem you as somebody that I can attack. And so a lot of the times it's not necessarily the fact that you've got the tools and so on and so forth that, you know, that helps you. It's also your confidence, your persona changes when you feel confident that you can defend yourself. Therefore, people looking at you are less likely to want to attack you just because of your walk is different. You're walking with your head high, and it's usually those guys that look vulnerable and look kind of timid are the ones that, that's a bit of a target. And again, it can happen anywhere, don't get me wrong, and it can happen even when you do appear confident, but a lot of the time it is, you know, it's the way you carry yourself. And again, martial arts helps you build that kind of confidence.
Yeah, so good, because the same message applies to, well, from the street to the boardroom, to the octagon, like, well, you know, that body, the posture, and that's kind of like how you hold yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so good. I'd love to talk a little bit more about your parents, because they were both martial artists. So we talk a lot on this podcast about purpose or destiny or dharma or whatever you want to call it. Given that your parents are both martial artists, was it your destiny, or do you feel like it is, to be a fighter?
Not necessarily. And like I say, like my other siblings didn't necessarily go into it. Some of them are still in it, some of them aren't. For me, it's just something that I was not always good at. It took a while, but I was good at. I don't believe it was my purpose, but obviously being surrounded by it a lot, it was something, like I said, I stuck at. I've always, like, it's a weird one. For me, movement has always been a really important thing to me, like I've picked up on. So when I was younger, I used to love dancing, and that hasn't changed, but music just took me to, in fact, I think that my mum said the first track, I can't remember how young I was, Baby, she saw me sitting there when I was able to sit upright and humming Bad from Michael Jackson. And
Nice.
just doing it myself, like just rocking away, and she just like, what's this kid? But I've always been into dancing, movement, but like I love that kind of side of things. So I knew whatever it was I would have done, it would have been in something where I was able to express myself from my body. But again, the one thing I stuck at, and I think because it had the association with my family, it kind of led me to kind of continue. In the kickboxing, I've done so much in the kickboxing, and just felt like it felt very repetitive. I was fighting the same people over and over again. I wanted more, and I wanted to be able to do it for a living. And where the kickboxing style that I was in, prior to that, you couldn't really do so. You had to be more, you had to teach, basically. So I was doing a lot of running a lot of classes and so on and so forth. But I was like, no, this is not, as much as I enjoy teaching, that's not what I wanted to do. Something that obviously if I wanted to, I could fall back on later. But at that time, I'm like, nah, I want to do something with like, but compete in front of people. And that was when I kind of was making a decision whether I was going to go to the boxing, maybe more full contact kickboxing, or maybe more the mixed martial arts. And I decided to go down that way.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about that decision later, but interesting you saying about the movement. It's you know, I was saying earlier about we're doing this campaign with SAYAT, creating some stuff on 4 ways. It's to manage mental health, really, but it's not really specific to that. It's just about life, and one of the parts we're doing is about movement. And like our movement's ancient. It's been around as long as we have, but so many of us today subscribe to like a sedentary lifestyle of sitting at a desk all day and then just swapping chairs, basically sit downstairs and watch TV. So it's so good to hear, man, that's one of the things that kept you in it for so long. Like, what would you say to people who don't move as much as they perhaps should do?
Well, as much as you say, look, it's just part of our whole being. You have to do just as much as it might be tiring, you know, you had a long day at work and so on, you know, having to get up and go and do it, but it's important to do. Just find whatever it is and do some form of movement every day. Well, it could be yoga classes, it could be Pilates, it could be dance classes, it could be, you know, spinning, it could whatever. There's so many different options out there nowadays. There's no excuses for anybody, really, and the time factor is usually the one that everyone kind of jumps to, but there's always a way to do it. And like I said, even if it's not a class, just get up in the morning a bit earlier and do a light jog, just do something. You know what I mean? Look the thing that we were doing over the lockdown is everybody was doing their little YouTube classes and everyone stuck at home doing those things. But why wasn't that important to you when you had your everyday life? That should have been the same thing. getting up, doing that same class, and because they were all online, I feel like you could type in anything on YouTube and find it. So there really is no excuses. So I think it's just important to just kind of make it a part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, it's huge. And part of that exploration of figuring out what you enjoy is actually some of the best part of it, right? Trying the different things.
100%. Like I've done everything, but again, I'm an active person. I knew I couldn't be that person that was behind the desk. I can't do it. I'm too fidgety. So yeah, but swimming, I used to ski, skateboarding, football, American football, rugby, like anything that was out there, I would want to try. You know what I mean? And even now, like I find myself thinking, like, what haven't I done? Let me go and try that.
So let's talk a little bit about, because I love that, man. And I was similar to you, and football was the sport that I was good at. So then, as much as I just loved football, like I knew I was better at that. So I was pulled to do that more. So was it the same thing with you? You know, you did so many sports, but were you, and I know you talked about having that pull to fight in because of your family and having that environment around you, but were you also naturally good at it?
No, not really. Weird enough, I was for many years. I actually remember for about a 4-year period going to competitions with my siblings and the rest of my external family. I call them, because like we were together all the time. We're driving up to Manchester. We're driving to Birmingham. We're going to Scotland, flying to Ireland. We're doing this, we're doing that. All these different competitions, and I was getting my ass handed to me every single time. And having to watch my siblings come back and their medals around their neck, like clink, 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 clink. Everyone's talking about the fight and what they've done, and I'm like, yeah. And I just got like smacked up. But like I said, I stayed in it just because I enjoyed the whole journey, like us traveling together, being together, cracking jokes on the bus journey or on the flight over, and just the whole experience. It was more than just that final result. That whole experience meant a lot, just being with everybody. So I would never have stopped it. You know what I mean? Regardless, I actually wasn't that good at it at that particular point, but I would never have stopped. And I think that being in it all the time, I eventually learned. There was one point where I realized I managed to just about qualify to go to what we call the US Open. It's the ISKA World Championship. So I'd managed to just qualify, and no one was expecting anything of me. It was just kind of like, man, congratulations, at least that's something to be proud of. And I get there, and don't know what it was, something that day I was just turned 12. Something that day just clicked, and every punch and kick that came, I felt like I could just see everything, and I was anticipating everything really well. I was countering, I was landing shots, I was doing all this, and it was just like one fight after the other. I just kept winning. And the way they did over there is they had like seeded fighters, but because they have their own kind of like courses and competitions over there, there was a lot of seeded fighters. And I remember my dad like, yeah, because I'd fought 5 times, and my dad's like, yeah, I'm sure you're probably in about the semi-finals or something now. And then the referee would be like, okay, bring over the seeded fighters, and you just see a load of kids come over, and it's just like, oh, Jesus. Fought again. It happened about 3 times, and then my dad literally was just like, mate, just keep fighting until they say you've won or something. And then they brought over, when I came on the mat one time, the referee said, okay, this is the semi-finals. And I was like, oh, geez. I won that, got to the final. It was a very tight fight, won that. I was like, oh, I'm a world champion. And it came from nothing. As in, I'd put in a lot of work, but a lot of that work was me just being hit, being kicked, being punched, not avoiding anything. And then, like I said, that day, for some reason, it all came together. Started winning, won a world title, came back, and I was a completely different person. So again, like I said, for 4 years, going to competitions and not getting placed anywhere, then just about qualifying, I think I got a 3rd that allowed me to qualify, being, the person that's definitely not supposed to win this one. He done well to get here. Winning the world championship. When I came back, and again, something was just different. For a year, all the kids that were beating me, I was destroying, like wiping them out in a completely different fashion. Like I was possessed by something else. Came back destroying, and I begged my dad. I was like, can I fight in the adult section? Now the adults start at 18, and I was just turned 13, and yeah, because we used to spar a lot of the adults together. And obviously, they know you're young, so they try to pull back on the power and so on and so forth. So I had that hunger. My dad was kind of like, as a coach, I know you're capable. As a dad, I really don't want you to be fighting guys 18 and up. Well, we'll see. So he put me in for one competition, and I think it's probably the worst one he put me in for, because at the end of this competition, all of the winners of the different weights went into an open weight, and then you could fight again. So I managed to win my first adult section, but it was in a competition where it now qualifies you for something else. So I'm looking at my dad and he's like, it's very different fighting people relative to your weight that are adults, but now fighting people that are not your weight and adults, he's like, nah, I don't really want you to do it. I was begging him for ages, and he's like, all right, cool. He's like, but as soon as if I see anything off, I'm pulling you out. I said, yeah, no problem. And I got all the way to the finals and lost to a guy in the final, but it was quite controversial. Basically, long story, the guy that I was fighting, his teammates were the referees. It's one of those things that happens. It just kind of happens in the game because everything's quite close. But there was no way they're letting this 13-year-old win like the open championship. And so I got silver, but then I start like from there. My dad's like, "Fine, you again, just keep going." And literally, just taking out adults, just ended up fighting for the England team. And being the youngest person ever to fight at that age for the England squad. We got third, but I just went from strength to strength from there. But there was a period where, this is probably not going to be for you.
That's really humbling to hear, I think, for people as well. Like, you don't always have to be the best to enjoy what you're doing. Like, you're enjoying the camaraderie and being around people. 100%. The thing that really stuck out to me, which is that moment where you said it clicked, and you said you didn't really know what it was that clicked. If you did know what it was that clicked, how would you explain it? Like, what happened to change things?
Like I said, I've gone in there almost knowing I'm not supposed to do well. But for me, I think it's just the speed of everything. Everything slowed down, and it's hard to really kind of explain, because it feels like you're talking some Matrix talks. You're like, no, no stopping bullets. But it really did feel like that, because imagine going from people throwing punches and kicks, and you're doing your best to move away, but still getting hit. But sometimes you forget how much you're registering. I used to sit down and watch other people's fights as well, so I'm very observant as well. But there's so much you're registering, even when things are going wrong for you. And for an example is a guy that's had 20, 30 fights. Maybe he hasn't got the best record, but he's still 20, 30 fights in that space. So a lot of the times you get these these underdogs winning fights, and they're like, well, look at his record. That's not supposed to happen. But of course it can happen, because he's very experienced. As regardless, he's not the best at what he's doing at current, but he's seen a lot, and he's been in a lot of scenarios, and that experience can help to take you a long way. You know what I mean? And that's what it was for me. I'd been in a lot of situations where when it came down to that moment when I needed it, it for some reason happened for me, where again it slowed down, and I was like, I've been here before. Punches are coming, I've adjusted, I've landed a shot. Kicks, I've blocked it, I've landed a shot. Like, it literally felt slow for me. And then I almost found myself just staying in that kind of phase for a long time after that. But like I said, 4 years, especially as a kid as well. Kids are, I think, more so nowadays, but they're not as persistent with training. It's like when it gets hard and stuff. I just remember watching all the old school kung fu films, and guys sitting there in horse stance getting whipped and this and that and that. It wasn't as bad for us, but that whole perseverance thing was kind of taught through us for watching those type of movies. Yeah. Whereas now you see one, like, you can watch a clip and you see them, they talk about how they trained, and it's like 4 years later, and straight away they're amazing, and people miss that those 4 years stuff was actually happening. I find a lot of those movies don't even show the training processes as much anymore. It's very short-lived. So you want to get to the action bit. But that, I used to love watching, like, for me, Jackie Chan at the time doing all these different training drills and how he had to do this, and his coach just putting him through his paces. So I was like, okay. And then eventually he got there. And I think that persistence is important.
That's amazing to hear, man. That's so good to hear, because also what you're saying is the experience of the fights, and that doesn't have to be a fight in a ring. Like for people who are listening who aren't a fighter, your fights could be confrontation in a meeting 100%. Or falling out with someone, and just having I suppose it's courage to go through it and get up and go again and get up and go again. Yeah. I heard an amazing story when you used to go to these competitions, and it was probably in your earlier days when you weren't winning all the time.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there as well, you used to sit and you'd watch. Yeah. So that experience of viewing, as an observer, viewing a fight away from it as well. Like how important was that?
Massively important. And I started doing things slightly unorthodox, and not in terms of my style, but what I would do is I'd see somebody's fighting style, and everyone's different. Everyone expresses themselves slightly different. I always say, like, me and you could start training exactly the same time, do exactly the same amount of training sessions, and learn from the same instructor, but your personality will bring a certain way that you'd punch differently to the way I'd punch. So we've done everything exactly the same, but we fight two completely different ways. You've taken to a certain move that I haven't taken to, and I'm like, nah, I'm more suited to this. So I prefer that, and you prefer this, and then all of a sudden we look like two completely different fighters. So what I used to do is I'd watch somebody's style and then go home and try and mimic that. So I had to learn how to move the way that they move, just to see what were they seeing. Like literally trying to put myself in their shoes. And obviously you get hit a lot because it's not comfortable fighting a way that you don't move. Yeah. But I learned loads. So again, watching people was very important for me, simply because I wanted to go back and replicate them. And it'll be in the gym, so getting hit and punched and kicked in the gym didn't really mean anything because you're not winning anything. So I'd go and I'd try this, and then I'd try that, and I'd try this, and I'd act like this and act like that. And then you learn a lot about those. And it's all the top fighters at the time. So I'd be looking at some of the best fighters at the time. And I'm just trying to replicate. I'm like, why do they fight like that? What are they seeing? What are they doing? I used to see things, and it just like certain things would come. I'm like, wow, okay, I like that. So then it just made my style. I was able to shift and change during fights, which made me that much harder to beat. Whereas a lot of people, once they find themselves, that's it. Now, if I figure out what your attributes are, and then I can work my counters and stuff towards that, then it's going to be very hard to beat me. But if, as I do that, you shift and change again, it's like, damn it, I got to figure it out again during the fight. So for me, it's like, it's a fast chess game. It's very important to have that ability to adjust and change during a fight. And weird enough, my last fight in Paris, I near enough had to do that because the canvas was quite slippery. Very slippery, and I think it's more so because all this whole COVID thing, everyone's trying to be extra safe, so they really sprayed down the canvas and just made it more difficult for the fighters, and especially for someone with my style, because I use my movement is everything, so I use that traction, getting from left to right is massively important. So if I get that little slip, it was just hard to function. But I just went right back to ground zero and started fighting like a basic fight, because I knew that fight has the most balance because I'm not doing too much, but I have to figure out where I can land my shots and where I can do this. But it didn't feel that difficult to adjust. It was frustrating, but not that difficult to adjust because I've done this time and time again, having to put myself in these kind of scenarios, uncomfortable scenarios, and still work it out. So yeah.
Where did you get that mindset from? Because maybe it's built up over time, but it's an amazing outlook to have, to be able to think like that. And you've almost considered every other person's style, which allows you to adjust to either another person's style or your own style.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, is that something that was taught to you, or you read about, or how did you decide to start looking at things like that?
I think it's more my personality. But saying that though, again, my instructor, obviously my dad at the time, he's always like, sometimes he'll handicap me as well. So he'd be like, okay, we're not doing any no kicks. So if I got to a point where my kicks were coming up and really good, and it was making it was difficult for me to learn or grow in or feel the need to grow, because all the kids at my age, I'm beating them, but I'm using just this one attribute. He's like, okay, no problem, no kicks anymore. I'm like, just taking away
in actual competition fights.
Competitions. He's like, no, don't kick.
Wow.
And I've done it to my students before, because I see the same thing, and they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, do you want me to lose? But I want you I want you to expand your mind. I think it's probably being forced to do those things. And I've got that kind of creativity in me anyway, just to be like, I'll just try this. And I don't mind losing. It doesn't bother me to get beaten or get hit or, you know, make that mistake. Sometimes people pay too much to just the rewarding side.
Mm-hmm.
So they neglect everything else. They're like, nah, you know what, I could try that, but I know I win like this and I like winning. For me, especially when I was getting my ass handed to me, it doesn't matter as much, you know. The trying to figure things out I've always just found fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So for me, again, it's a bit of like how my dad had coached me and a bit of just my own personality, kind of then just thinking, let me just try this, let me just try that.
Generally a curious person.
Yeah, very, very.
Do you, like, I'm assuming the answer to this is yes, like that your losses have taught you more than your wins?
I think that's a common I want to say misconception. I think people tend to pay more attention when they've lost.
Okay.
But I'm not like that. When I win, I'll look at my fight and I'll figure out one thing that I did wrong and it would bug me. And I'm like, wow, why did you do that? Oh, stupid. Like, I should have put my foot. I probably could have finished that fight earlier, or I probably could have done better in that fight and looked better in that fight. So a lot of times is when through your success, again, same thing, through your success, you tend to just overlook what you did because the result was I won. So who cares? You know what I mean? And then on to the next fight where I won, but man, that one punch I should have done, and then I could have caught him with that kick, that flashy kick that I've been practicing. I could have caught him there. And I just like to analyze for this win, lose, draw, whatever it is. I'll just go back and analyze just for the sake of it. So, and I've, again, from young, always been like that. And my dad, another person, again, that would just be, I'd come off, everybody's like, yeah, wicked fight, man. Yeah, that was so sick, that kick you did. And I was like, why did you do that punch there? That was silly. And he'd tell me that first. And get me like, yeah, think about that. No, of course, yeah, congratulations, you won. That's the easy thing. We can go and celebrate afterwards, but you should have done this. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, you know. And he just puts that in my head.
But that's so good for life as well. I'm just, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, so it's such a distant metaphor for what you've just explained there. But so if I talk about like journaling, which is something I've recently started to do, if there's things that I am frustrated, disappointed, feeling negative about, I'll write them down because it helps me to observe how I'm thinking about it, and then I get the space and I can see it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I'll only ever do it if I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
Like if I'm having a good day, then I'm all right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people refuse to, well, not necessarily refuse to, but just don't see the need to reflect on the positives.
100%.
That's great.
But that's why that saying has come in. You learn more from your losses than your wins. And I just think that I personally just think that's wrong. I just think it's because of how we've been programmed to even those type of sayings throw our head into, it's okay to not pay attention to your wins and then just continue. But there's a lot you can learn from in just every moment and everything of every aspect that you're doing. If you actually pay attention, you'll be like, I could probably do that better, even though I did it well. So
I suppose it's easier to see what went wrong in the losses, and we are creatures that like the path of least resistance. So it's easy, like you can find what went wrong in a loss like pretty easily. Yeah. What's your reflection process? What do you do?
Just going over it again, the same way I would sit and observe when I was younger, somebody random. I'll do the same thing for myself. I'll do the same thing on my opponents, usually after a fight.
Is that like watching film or just like?
Yeah, just watching footage on what I've done. For me personally, I can just go back over and just watch something again and again and again. And similar to a film, and I say similar to most of the people that I've spoken to are the same. You can watch a film 3 or 4 times and you always notice something different, like as you go. So even just watching it once and picking up on one thing doesn't mean that's the end of your studies.
That's, mate, do you know what? That's so funny you're saying that. Like, even if you do notice it, if you watch it again in a year, you've experienced 12 months of life, which makes you see that same thing in a different light anyway.
Completely different. And that's what I'm saying. So I'll randomly just go through, just watch a couple of the fights. And it's not too obsessively, because that could be negative in a different way. But yeah, I'll just randomly go back, watch a couple of fights. I'm like, oh yeah. Or my coach will tell me about, and he's my coach now in London, Alexis, is like that photographic memory. Like I'll do something in the gym and he's like, oh, that's exactly what you did when you did against such and such. And I'm like, huh? So I go back and I'm like, I see what he means now. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just important to just keep checking and seeing, like you said, you might see something different that in the same thing that you saw before.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The quote was like, the biggest gift in life is to see the same thing with new eyes.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So you talked a little bit about your style and how much that's impacted by your personality.
Yeah,
I think I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. The performance side of things. You spoke earlier about how when the lights are on, that's what you kind of, that's when you're in your element, really. Yeah. So like it's like the hands down style, right? People talk about MVP hands down style. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what that style is, what it means to you, how you, I guess, kind of created that style?
Yeah. So I always like to make clear. So for me, the hands down style is not something that I created. It's something that my sport over time has created. Again, I'm just in a sport where it's not televised that much. But if I was to bring you to one of my old competitions I used to go to in the freestyle kickboxing world, you'd see guys from this age, like 4, fighting with their hands down. So that attribute of mine is not from me. You know what I mean? It came from, like I say, the freestyle kickboxing world.
I suppose it's rare in the modern day to see the style, so there were people attach it to you.
Yeah, of course. Now, what it is, this is rare in the full contact world. So our style was more, our kickboxing style was more based on the speed element of kickboxing, whereas most kickboxers more, obviously the speed is involved, but the whole focus is the power element of it and being able to put your opponent down. Whereas ours was point scoring. It's about reading the space in between me and my opponent. So landing a shot and not getting hit and scoring that point. So, and it's a very difficult skill. Although it's you can watch it and be like, you don't know what's going on, because it's like I don't know, like a fencing match. They're trying to score points and you might not see it, but when you understand it, you're like, wow, like. And then when you do it yourself, like, this is difficult to move at these speeds. And later on, the faster you move, comes power anyway. So a lot of the time, some of the hardest shots I've had and received in my career of fighting is being from the softer sport, because these guys were flying in at each other at such speeds. You'd get hit, you're just like, whoa. So, but a lot of, we kind of fall into that same trap of believing, because we do the points scoring side, that we're not capable of doing the other side. I remember being younger, and even towards my adult, like late teens, people have spoken to me about doing like other things, and I'm like, man, that looks way too tough, man. Like, I don't know if I could do that. But no one ever really tried it. Yeah, you know what I mean. And now a few people kind of went over, and then you realize it's even when I first went to do sparring in MMA, and people hit me with shots, I'm like, this feels way slower. So this is nowhere near as bad. The worst thing for me was the leg kicks, because we never had it in our style. So it was just hard to kind of get accustomed to that. But after you kind of understand the time and you figure out your responses, I'm like, man, these guys don't punch us nowhere near as hard or move as fast. So I'm able to kind of anticipate and adjust. But yeah, so all I've done is add my personality to an already existing style, which is that hands down style. And again, there's a lot of controversy around it in terms of people saying that's not the safest way of fighting. Now, I would say exactly the same thing. Like, so why is it not safe? Oh, well, because your hands are down, you need to protect yourself. Cool. You know, you can get knocked out. So I always ask the same question directly afterwards. Do people with their hands up not get knocked out? And they're like, yeah. Also, then that takes if everybody with their hands up never got knocked out, then fine, I'd agree with you. But like I said, I'm reading between the space between me. Don't get me wrong, I understand my distance. I almost feel like my hand's there. I know if your movement or your foot or your hand gets to a certain distance, my feet have to be working. And because of that, I'm able to anticipate punches and kicks. So I don't need my hands to be there. In fact, my arms are so relaxed, I have more energy in them over a longer period of time, because you guys are tense here. And it's not one size right and one size wrong. It's just a different aspect of looking at things. You know what I mean? That's your style. I appreciate it, and it does work. And when I need to go to my basics, my hands are up. I don't teach my students with their hands down. They need to understand how to judge distance, which means at the beginning, put a barrier in front. So when shots are coming towards you and it hits your hand, usually your hand and then your head moves because your responses are late. And then later on you're moving with it, and later on you can relax your hand, and it's the same thing. You can start to see and adjust for timing. But at the beginning, you're going to have no responses. The response is going to be crap. So yes, have a secondary, approach and have your guard up.
Yeah.
And so all my students teach them exactly the same way. You have the hands up first. So I know how important it is. But after a while, you can adjust.
It's music to my ears, mate. It's music to my ears. So this podcast, Take Flight, is part of it is about performance, like surface level. It's about how can everyone be better in what they do, right? Which, people want it to be able to improve. Mostly we want to progress.
Yep.
But the other side of it, for me anyway, was taking that leap of faith into something that I'm passionate about, that I want to do and spend my life, putting my life work into something.
Yeah.
And for me, that was not being in the corporate world. That was creating my own thing.
Yeah.
And basically what you're saying there, to translate that example into the real world, into life away from fighting, is that it's not one size fits all. You don't have to just we don't all have to do the same thing.
Not at all.
We don't have to do, in life's case, it's the societal expectation of going into school, college, work, etc. And that's the same thing with your fighting. People have said that there's one way to do it, hands up, but it's not necessarily the case.
Not at all. And we've seen it time and time again. I find in boxing mainly, a lot of the old school boxing coaches, not necessarily the new school guys, but again, they're very one-dimensional on how and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of one of the reasons why I tried to steer away from it, because I had a feeling, I had been to a couple of boxing gyms as well prior, but I had a feeling they were just going to hate everything I did and just try to change me. And why I love and fell in love with my gym and my coaches there is he saw my style, didn't get what was going on, and then was like, but something's working here. Let me go and research your style. Let me go and practice moves that you do. Let me understand exactly what you're doing, so then I can help coach you better on what you should and shouldn't do. And straight away that mindset to me said, yep, I don't want to be anywhere else apart from somebody that is still learning themselves. And that's what I love about my coach. He's still a student. And especially a lot of the, like I said, when people get to a certain level of success, especially with their coaching, they stop learning. So anything new, they're like, nah, don't do that. Everything you just did there, forget that. Put your hands here, and it just becomes the same. And again, it works for them, but it's not one size fits all. So you have to learn to flex a little bit with certain people. And it's important.
I'm loving this, man. I'm thinking things as you're speaking, and then you say it, and I was like, yes, it's so good, man. So I want to talk a little bit more about what you've done as a professional in the game. You're one of the most devastating fighters on the planet. The things that you've done, the first big knockout that went viral straight away, and pretty much everyone ever since then has done the same. So what's happening for you when you're in those fights, and specifically if we talk a little bit more about during those moments of knocking your opponents out?
It's weird. I'm in a certain almost flow. I feel like once I'm there, there's nothing to stress about, because I'm confident that I'm with the right team. I'm confident that they put me through. Well, I don't even have to be confident about that. My body will tell me that they put me through the right amount of work, and we've done our due diligence in terms of looking at our opponent and speaking about what that person likes to do and so on and so forth. So when I get there, I'm just able to smile and enjoy myself, which is what a lot of times people almost freaked out about how confident I look in that moment, but I'm just genuinely enjoying. I love just being in that element. So trying to alleviate as many different stresses as possible, so when I get there, I can enjoy it as much as possible. So, and when I always, even the guys in the gym, because sometimes we'll have music, or a lot of times we'll have music playing, and anytime they can hear me mumbling or thinking or smiling to the music, they're like, oh man, it's gonna be stressful, because they know I get lifted for it being in that element, and music is for me is just the one thing that can just get me there quickly.
What's your go-to song?
I always say this: if I was to show you my Spotify, you'd think there's about 7-8 different people listening that listen to the same thing, because I can go from rock to rap to opera to revival to reggae to I bounce around to anything. And this is what I like about music. If I feel like I got too much like energy in me and I need to relax because I've still got 2 days before my fight, I throw on some Etta James and like just like Tom Misch and calm myself down. Do you know what I mean? If I need to be lifted, I got like loads of people, but like Rick Ross and this rap and it, like this. There's music can push and pull your emotions, and because I'm aware of that, what it does for me, I just like if I need something, I know it's there. I've got something for it, and I listen to a lot of different people. So it varies all the time. But in terms of,
it's funny, just quickly on what you were saying as well. Firstly, completely agree with you about music. I absolutely love it. We've been listening to some absolute bangers today. And it does allow you to access different emotions that sometimes you need and sometimes you don't need, right? But you're talking about how you remove as many stresses as possible. As boring as it sounds, confidence is basically preparation a lot of the time. So when we have everything in place and we know where we stand, that's when we can puff our chest out and feel a little bit more confident about whatever it is that we're facing. I think I want to talk a little bit more about, so if we, let's cut straight to the chase. Like your flying knee knockout was firstly like poetry in motion. So what's happening for you in that moment? And the follow-up question is, how do you feel afterwards? Like, you're going into fight and it's kind of like life and death really. You protect yourself, you want to win. How do you feel doing that kind of damage to another person?
So if I start with like in that moment, there's always like a massive relief and then rush of excitement and happiness all in one, because all that work that you put through, you've just completed that. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't know, being stuck on a level on a game or something, and it's like, and then you just that win, you're like, yes. Obviously it still goes on, there's still more to go, but that then you get a massive rush of excitement. And I'm very present when I'm fighting, and this is why I find my celebrations can be a little bit more eccentric than most, because it's not just a rush of emotion that just makes me go and jump on the cage and backflip and this and that. I can actually, in that moment, I can sit back and be like, what is it I wanted to do? Oh yeah, I got this prepared and I got that prepared. But that's because I'm very present, which is difficult to be, because it just takes, I think my time in the kickboxing world has helped me just being under the lights and fighting so regularly that it becomes very comfortable. It feels like a training session, whereas a lot of people, you kind of rise to the occasion. I can relax in an occasion, which is it can be difficult to do, and it takes a lot of just being there. But in terms of the devastation, we all know what we sign up for, and if that opponent could switch it, at the sign of a contract, you'd do that with no questions. But when you, regardless of that, you're still like, immediately, it wasn't afterwards, because I didn't actually know until the next day in terms of the damage that was there. Is after that, and you're like, oh man, like I hope he's okay, because it's a bad injury. And I think most fighters, I don't want to say all, just there's always going to be some, but most fighters will feel the same. We understand that it's a job, but then we're human after that, if you know what I mean. I understand that it's a vicious, it can be a vicious job, but we all have like just normal emotions afterwards. And regardless of what happened in there, although you are happy it happened that way around, you still don't want anything negative to happen. You don't want to hear anything bad, any bad no reviews on what that person's injury that person's had or whatever. So straight afterwards you can feel a bit crap as well, and you kind of have to keep reminding yourself that it obviously is part and parcel. And like I said, if there could have been a switch, there would have been.
Amazing life lesson on a few things there. If we go back to what you were saying previously, it's a lesson on perception, because we can now sit here and go, Mike's fractured his skull and celebrated whatever, but you didn't know at the time. But now, so that's in hindsight, looking back, we can think that. I think that's really, really interesting. And it's funny actually, I had George Groves on the podcast.
Okay, cool.
Lovely guy, he's awesome. But he spoke about, because I don't know if you know, he had a fight a couple before his title fight, and he put someone in a coma. So he talked about how that softened him, and he like kind of went off the sport after that, because
like I said, he's human, and I get it so many times. You get so many people that would meet, like so as we're doing now, and be like, oh man, I thought he was going to be different, like because again they're looking at our fight persona. You only ever get to judge me based on a persona that I have to put on to get myself in a certain mindset, and that's the only time you ever get to see me. And a lot of fighters, when you speak to them afterwards, they're like, oh man, they're chill, man, they're very relaxed, or they're very this. They might look really aggressive there. And I always relate it to Wayne Rooney, simply because on the pitch he's a bit ferocious, man. He's like screaming, shouting, and then you hear him interview, like you're like, where's Rooney gone? Like, who's this imposter? But it's because he, like any sportsman and woman, have to take themselves like out of themselves a lot of the time and project themselves into something else to get to that level. You know, to perform at your highest. So everyone's got a certain way about them. So judging people based on that is difficult. That's not their personality. So of course, as soon as you suck yourself back out after the fight's finished, you're back to being yourself. And if you just put someone in a coma, you're gonna feel horrible. Like I said, that for the most, I haven't come across anybody, but I'm sure there's not one person that wouldn't say they don't feel bad. Do you know what I mean? It's a horrible feeling to know that you've done that. And like you said, softening yourself, I completely understand. It's scary to then know that you have this ability and then want to hit somebody again, and you have to keep it's a lot to go through. Maybe it's an age thing as well. Like I'm 33, I think. Are you 33 as well? Yeah, just turned 34. Just turned 34. Okay, so you kind of get to that age where you're like, you're kind of getting a bit more mature now. I don't know. 100%. One thing I can say about the fight, in terms of again, just people understanding, because they're like, how can you crack somebody's skull and then celebrate in that fashion? I don't believe I would have celebrated in that way if I known. After I landed that jump knee, he turned face down and was obviously his legs were still kicking, so I'm like, he's not knocked out, he's in pain. But a common injury is like a broken nose, which is not that like devastating, but it's enough to make people quit. Like likes of like Rory McDonald has called it on a fight because he had a broken nose and kept getting hit on that nose. And he's an amazing fighter, so he's not someone that's gonna quit for anybody. So I know how something like that can still get you out of a fight, but it's not bad enough to me to be like coming over to check him and worry about it. And obviously you got the medics there that are going to rush in, and the referee's going to kind of do his job and make sure that the fight is safe. So then I've gone off. I already know what I was going to do. I had that planned, and come in, got the hat, got the ball, did the whole thing, celebrated. I had them pull me to do the interview, and he's got up and obviously left in that time. I hadn't seen him again. Like I didn't get to see him afterwards. And again, it wasn't something that I think to even ask about. You know what I mean? Like, and these things happen. You know what I mean? Sometimes like one of my opponents got a big cut over his eye. I know the process of like either a broken nose or a cut. Like I get the process. It's not something I have to double check on. Usually everyone kind of goes to. We usually have our own little fighters kind of get together afterwards. So we bump into guys again and so on and so forth. But my family was over from America, so I just kind of went off with them. Yeah. It was the next day that my sister sent me a picture of the skull. Now, my family are full of jokers, yeah. So I genuinely, when she sent it, I started laughing. I was cracking up, man. I was like, "Why would you do this?" She's like, "I didn't do it. I just thought she had edited it as a joke, like made it seem like, oh yeah, look what your knee did, da 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 da." So she sent it to me. I was laughing. She's like, "Nah, this is online. This is not me." And I was like, "You being serious?" Like, so I went up online and I started seeing the pictures everywhere and so on. And so I was just like, "Damn!" So we tried to reach out to his team, couldn't get a hold of them, and we started a GoFundMe page to help because he teaches and does certain things that we wanted to. So we did. There was just loads of stuff that we were doing. And I think it was like 2 years later that I met him. It was like again, but it was. It was a bit of an awkward one because even my coach was like, "Do you want to go and see him?" I was like, "Yeah, no, definitely." Because we was at another MMA event together, but his student was fighting one of my teammates, and then my teammate popped his knee during a submission, and then we were coming in to be like, "Hey, how's things?" And it's like he's already pissed off at me, I'm sure, and then he's gonna be even more annoyed that another one of my teammates are just injured. It was just so awkward.
Was it?
It was very awkward, but we kind of obviously like shook hands and did there.
That's great to hear, man. Like, I think what I was going to say about that whole piece is because you're in the public eye, and this happens with a lot of people. Whether it's, you know, you see someone in work for an hour or whatever it is, you make an assumption about someone. So people make an assumption about you during that short period that they see you on TV. Yep. You know, and you've got the pressure of it's a show at the end of the day. It is a show that you need to perform in. So people make these judgments about people. I told you my sport was football. And I remember like after the games, obviously you go out, you see people, and one of the other players' partners was like, "Oh, you're actually all right. Like you're not that serious." Just because she just made a perception about me on the pitch, where obviously swearing and shouting and whatever else. But it's just it's very difficult. But I think if more people could try not to judge on the small part that you see about someone, you know.
I'm like that because I always be like, people always, "Oh, what do you think of this guy?" Like, seems like an arsehole, but it fights amazing. Some people mix the two. So because I don't like the guy, fair enough, you don't have to support him, but because I don't like the guy, he's shit, he's rubbish, he's this, he's that. And it's like, no, let's be honest now. The guy's a great athlete. You might not like his, and I'm clear that if he seems like something, it's because that's his persona I get to watch, but I don't know him. So a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, have you met this person? Have you met that person?" And I haven't yet. Yeah, no, he's this, he's that. I said, you know what, that might be your experience, but I might happen to get on with him or get on with that girl. So I'm not gonna make too much of a judge. I appreciate what you're saying, and then I might meet them and be like, "Yeah, you're correct. Like this person's an idiot." But until I know, I don't know. And I think a lot of people mix the two. Like I heard so many arguments with friends about like Mayweather and stuff like that. Everyone's obviously gonna have their opinion, but. And I just don't like him. And I said, yeah, that's fine. But that's his personality that he's putting on. Might actually be him. I don't know. But let's say you're talking more about the personality. But is he a great boxer? Yes. No, he's this. Oh, he should have fought this. I'm like, okay, no problem. That's another conversation. Leave it at that. But yeah, people tend to mix that all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can imagine, especially in boxing with the egos and all that sort of stuff, but like, or fighting in general. But it's huge. We were actually just talking about this in the car on the way over. Yeah. It's like, I think it's a small industry when you start to meet people who are, especially in the public eye or on TV or whatever. Yeah. I think the more I've done this and I've sat down and met people, I feel like, and I'd agree with what you said earlier, by the way, like incredibly down to earth, just come across as such a lovely person. But in the ring, obviously, you get a certain view of that. But yeah, I think it's, you know, just remove your judgments, remove your biases. You know, try and understand where they're even coming from. Like, why do you think that? Is it a lot of that's from jealousy? People have their own insecurities and they project that 100%.
Or somebody that has, you know, antagonized them in their life feels very similar to that person's personality. But remember, it's just he's doing a job and he has to get himself to a certain. There's guys I know that are quite when it comes to work, their character is massively shifts, like massively shift. They're on a job and they're a bit more. They're less patient. They're a bit more like forward when they're speaking to people, less caring, but they're trying to get a job done. And then when they're outside of that job, you see them just, their whole character just shifts. Like they take that hat off and they relax, and you're like, oh man, you're actually chilling. You're smiling for once. You know what I mean? But everyone's got different personality traits that expand or reduce depending on the situation they're in. We're constantly fighting under a spotlight, and in order to get over our natural anxieties and your natural fears and stuff, you have to put yourself in this. Sometimes I always tell people, especially in our sport, just fake it until you make it. Look at your most confident fighter. How do they act? Go and be that person. Just put yourself in that mindset too, because it's easier to try and focus on mimicking somebody else than worrying about, oh man, if I don't win, this can happen. Oh my, it's embarrassing. Oh, my family's here and this. And I've spoken to established fighters who will tell me exactly the same thing, as if somebody knew. That they're just coming and they're like, yeah, man, it's just frustrating because of this and that. And, you know, they're already spending their paycheck before and they're like, I need to buy it. I was like, ignore all of that. Don't be that person. And that's going to take you out of being the best you. Just what is the most confident version of you? Go and be that person. Just fake it. Go in there and just be, puff your chest out, walk. Look at the most obvious person to kind of look at is likes of Conor McGregor. look how he walks around during that. I don't genuinely don't believe he practices that, but that's like, what's the most confident how can I portray myself as the most confident? Seeing somebody that confident across the cage, across the ring, wherever, even football, seeing a team that's so confident is very off-putting. It's very belittling, and that's exactly where you want your opponent. So 100%, like, these are the kind of traits you're commonly going to come across as a fighter, and commonly you're going to watch. And everyone relates to other people, and they're like, yeah, but this person is nice. And yes, you're gonna get guys that prefer to be a certain way the whole way through, and they're confident in themselves regardless of showing it, but some people are not.
Yeah, it's so good, man. I mean, there's a concept called the alter ego, which I know your alter ego being MVP. Which, because I think that, like, so you're talking about the person in the office who puts a mask on, really, like, for the majority of the day, and then gets to be himself for a couple of hours in the evening. Yeah. But like, the idea of having an alter ego is you turn it on for the performance, but then everything around that performance is you, like your true authentic self. Yeah. And I love what you're saying there about, like, because the irony of fake it till you make it is you're actually not faking anything. You're still being yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is amazing. But if you can, you're trying to hack confidence by getting inspiration from others, looking at their styles and everything else. So again, I'm going to stack a question, mate, which is the worst thing to do. But I'd love to hear a bit more about your alter ego. In fact, I'll let you just answer that one first. So if you talk about MVP, like, what does that mean to you?
It's weird. That's the show. That's the show me. That's when the fights come in. That's the excitement side. That's the show off side. You know, I really. That's why I say I enjoy being there. You're not there all the time. It's gonna be very hard to just be MVP everywhere. Just sitting here, just like this, rolling my hands. Yeah. So about this, that. It's difficult. It's difficult to be that all the time. But saying that, same as you just spoke about in terms of faking it till you make it, or kind of like putting the better you out. Some people, if they're that too much, they can spill over into other things, and they struggle to turn it off, which can be a danger. Having good people around you that keeps bringing you back down to, okay, remember who you are, and then remember that has to be turned on, and sometimes has to be turned off as well. But for me, MVP is more just it's just showtime. It's just even how the name came up, it wasn't something that we kind of thought of. When I was 8 or 9, my extended family, he's like an older brother to me, Marvin, he used to call me Venom. And this is from a young age, like, call me Venom. And he's just like, he explained it like, you're just so, like, I was mad skinny, very gangly, but I was able to hit quite hard. And he's just like, anytime I see you hit some other kids, sometimes, like, you see them flying, it's like, that shouldn't happen. You got a lot of venom in your shots. And he just kept calling that was it. It kind of stuck. He would just call me Venom. And then later on, I started putting Michael Venom Page on my thing just for fun. And then past that, later, I don't even think it was him that came up with the MVP, but somebody was like, somebody pointed out that, that creates MVP. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And then just kind of went with that. But yeah, that is just the Showtime me. That's it really. And I just enjoy being in that place at that particular time. It's so good. But I think we can all have an alter ego. Oh, no, I think everyone can create that for themselves. Some people do it in different ways. Sometimes they need, I hate doing like this, but some people are like that. In order to get them there, they have to have specific things. Or I need my lucky socks, or I need this, or like, let's say going out, people I need alcohol to give me that confidence to then do. That's just an excuse. You can get yourself there without it, but some people just need to feel like they need to have that clutch, that crutch, to kind of to lean on. And I feel like if you practice it enough, you can get yourself there without having to use something else as the lucky thing that puts you in that state of mind. But some people just need to have something to associate it to help them get to that. And I know people that have like lucky shorts and this and no, if that doesn't go quite right, it's hard. Now they're rattled, and that's the one reason why I don't like having anything to associate it with. It has to be something that I can just turn on at any point. But again, each to their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So many of the past guests on this podcast have been the best in the world at what they do, similar to yourself. Mm-hmm. And they all say the same thing. At the beginning of their careers, they might have tried to lean on those crutches. But later on, you realise they don't fucking help.
Yeah, they don't. It can be a deterrent sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if for whatever reason you end up stressing more about making sure that's there than actually focusing on the matter at hand.
How would you advise someone who's listening to this now to create an alter ego for themselves so that they can turn on the performance wherever they do that for themselves?
Like anything, you practice it. And it sounds weird. And not that I sit in the mirror like MVP, but I get many, especially even in the gym, I get a lot, when time we're sparring, I turn MVP on. But it's just practicing. It allows you to get there more easily. And I think people feel uncomfortable practicing these kind of things, but in everything you'll see it. Like some of the best actors, they become that person, but they're in it as often as possible to kind of get to that place as quickly as possible. So I think yes, it's exactly that. You have to program yourself to be there. And if it is, let's go right down to a job interview. That one, you probably sit down and practice how you're going to speak to people. Ask people to come in. Look, I'm coming in for a job. Just let me know how you feel. So I'm talking from the start. You're shaking somebody's hand. How you're smiling. How you're looking at them. Practice it, and then it just becomes norm. It becomes second nature, and you know again when to turn it on and when you can kind of relax. But you have to practice these things. You can't just expect it to just happen. Some people are confident enough to just do it, and if you're not, you have to really push yourself to get to that place of confidence.
Yeah, train hard, fight easy.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Mine was MW9. MW, just my initials. Yeah. Really creative, but it was the 9, which was my football number, which meant a lot to me. Like the position of the 9 is like that attacking, create something, make something happen. So like just referring to myself as that, as I was put my boots on, made me just click into gear and start to think about that.
Wicked.
So let's talk a little bit about what the future holds for MVP, because you've got a few fights left with Bellator. You've got a fight coming up very soon. Hopefully the championship fight not too long after that. Where do you see yourself going?
It's weird, you know. Like I said, I'm doing what I enjoy. That was the whole point of me kind of crossing over. I'm doing what I enjoy. I'm making a living from doing what I enjoy, and also because of my status now and the status that I've kind of created for myself. I'm in contact with a lot of different people that you probably never would have met before. So right now, my focus is just I'm doing working on a lot of different projects while training, and just trying to set up things in the background. It's a lot of work, but that for me is starting to become my new passion.
And what specifically are you doing?
Oh God!
If you can share.
So I'm working with a political party. I've actually only last year with what's gone on, I've realised how important politics is.
I think I saw you. Did you went and did a talk at somewhere?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm involved with this Taking the Initiative party, and we're trying to it's about kind of giving back to the working class people. So we're doing a lot of work in the background on that. Also, obviously, setting up for the future in terms of personally, trying to buy properties and so on and so forth. So I've got a property company that I'm working on. We're actually trying to work on, I don't want to say anything too early, but working on building a school, basically, an academy. But we want to be a bit more specific to creatives and not so regimented. I find the school system definitely didn't work for people like myself. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm a more physical person, so sitting in a classroom for hours doesn't help me at all. And I know so many kids that are the same. So working with kids and trying to help that side along, because again, I've been in bad areas for the majority of my life, and I just know I was fortunate enough to not be sucked in by it, but I see it all. You know what I mean? So we're working on a lot of different projects. Again, I don't want to say too much, but we're working on a lot of different projects in the background. And then again, for me personally, maybe later on, I want to get into acting as well. Something that I've always wanted to get into. We're writing last year, almost around this time, I was in Tobago with my family. My brother got married over there.
Nice.
And we were just chilling. And for some reason, I just started writing some stuff on my phone, which has now turned into a series that we're building. That's going to come out soon. I say soon. It's going to take maybe a year and a bit before we get there. But just working on loads of different projects.
What's the series about?
It's a martial arts series. Again, I can't say too much
Okay.
But it's going to be a martial arts series set in a bit more present day. But yeah, it's looking exciting to be fair.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's looking exciting. Like really, I'm a fan of the kind of the old school arts as well. So I'm trying to bring some of that back to the world. Because same thing I said to you at the beginning, those kind of, even those lessons, man, I think I learned so much from it, and they don't really portray that enough in the new films.
So much has been lost over the years that could have just been passed down. Yeah. But I think if any martial arts is one that does have the tradition and pass things down, man, it's so good. But do you know what's important about that? And this is something I preach a lot, is about creating your own buzz. Yeah. Because you've done that for yourself. You've created this lifestyle for yourself, and you've been incredibly successful. Mm-hmm. Which has then led you to meet the people that, you mates with 50 Cent and hanging out with people like that, and then creating a series, being out. Why not? Why not do all that stuff?
100%. And I'm a creative mind, and I got so much in my head that I need to get out and work on. But yeah, we're doing a lot, and a lot of people might tell me I'm doing a bit too much, but I just try and do as much as possible, and then leave and help the next generation in whatever. A lot of people, it's quite obvious to kind of go into the realm of martial arts, and I still have gyms with my brother in the martial arts world, but he's the main guy in that now, because that's just not where my heart is. I want to do more for people. Like I said, I want to try and get it in the schools, which is one of the reasons why we want to try and do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. Like, instead of I'll keep bugging all these schools and they're just like, nah, not interested.
Yeah, because they're fixed.
No problem. Yeah, they're fixed in their ways. It works for them. Cool. Mm-hmm. No problem. Go do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And we'll show you exactly the benefits of it by example. And then, maybe you might be interested later on. Mm-hmm. But for now, we'll just do it ourselves.
So inspiring, man. If we talked about, I'll take you back to fighting again. Yeah. Like, where do you see yourself? Do you want to stay in MMA? Do you want to go to UFC? Would you stay with Bellator? Would you go boxing? I've had Eddie Hearn on the podcast. Would you jump in and go boxing?
The boxing for me, if we go back to what I said in terms of my decision, one of my good friends, again, another older brother, he's the person that I was training with from young. He went into boxing, went to Repton, and was kind of explaining how things had led for him, with a lot of the politics involved in it. And I found boxing did have quite a lot of politics, so that's what kind of kept me away as well. So I thought, okay, obviously I felt like it's going to be hard to find a reputable coach that's willing to allow my style to continue. So I decided to go the other way, but obviously found myself coming back to boxing, simply because when I was sparring in the MMA, my coach would tell me, okay, yeah, we're going to bring in some boxers, and some boxers, we've had high level boxers, he makes it seem casual, like, yeah, he's going to bring in a few boxers. But he wants to see us excel, because we're mixed martial arts, he wants to see us excel in all the disciplines. So he'll bring in top jiu-jitsu guys, he'll bring in top wrestlers in, and we have to try and hang or be competent in those areas. And one place that I was doing really well was the boxing. And he's like, yeah, his good friend was David Hay. He's got obviously an immediate link there, so I started doing the boxing with him. I actually got had to sit down around a table, like 20 guys, after my second boxing bout, and they were basically saying there's a grey area in the rules that prevents me from doing both boxing and MMA at the same time. So and they put my license on hold. So that's the only reason why I kind of stopped, because I was doing it. Obviously, I was just happy to just kind of bounce back and forth. There are ways around it, but it just felt like a headache. I was like, I don't know why this is so difficult. I love to fight. Mm-hmm. People like to see me. Let me fight. Yeah. Again, Eddie Hearn, if he's out there and he wants to get some of the MVP show, then yeah, 100%. I'm definitely still up for boxing. I would love to be the first person to hold an MMA belt and a boxing belt at the same time, because I haven't seen it done anywhere else. So I'd love to be the first person to do that, So that is still a goal of mine that I want to achieve, but there's a lot of people and hurdles you have to kind of jump through.
Yeah.
But again, if there is somebody like the likes of Eddie Hearn that can help assist something like that, then 100% I'm definitely there. I work hard, and it's not just just a lucky gift that I have. That it's been over years of pushing myself. So yeah, definitely still want to box. Definitely want to get a title in Bellator, and I do see myself going to UFC as well, just because there's some great fights and great matchups over there, and we'll see. But for now, it's just focus on where I'm at, focus on beating everybody, and just keep growing my name and making more connections.
Amazing, man. I saw your eyes change then when you said I want an MMA belt and a boxing belt. I was like, oh, he's gonna get it.
No, I want it, man. I do. I definitely want it. Again, it's just like I said. There's just a lot of hurdles. If there's anybody that can kind of help alleviate those things, I just make it so a bit more of a smoother ride. Then definitely.
Yeah, amazing. That's what you learn again when you get up towards the top of something. How many rules and regulations there are.
Man. Sometimes I always kind of say like I wish because imagine going from literally near enough every single weekend I would compete somewhere. Just drive wherever it is and fight, to one fight, then 6 months of training or 4 months of training, another fight, and then 9 months of training, and it's very difficult. It was very difficult for me to adjust to, and this is why I think not last year, the year before, I had 5 fights in 1 year, but I was screaming for it. But I was in a position now where I could be heard. So I had a bit more say. So I was pushing. I was actually pushing for fights. No, I want to fight again. And people always ask you, like, how's your body feeling? I feel great. I'm fortunate enough to have the style that I have, so I don't take that much damage. So I'm usually even after a 15-minute fight, I've probably only been hit 3 times. So I'm good to go again. But again, it's all we have to promote it, and then this, and then that, and that comes first, and then that. And I'm just like, mate, just let me fight, please. Yeah. But yeah, it's obviously with this whole COVID situation, certain things they're not promoting things as far in advance as before, simply because there's no crowd to promote to. So it's a bit easier to kind of be a bit
working
more
in your favor.
On top. And now shows have started again. I'm going to be on it.
Amazing, man. No, I can't wait to see you fighting again. So we do the same 3 questions, quick fire ones at the end of every episode. Cool. I've got one more before we do that. So if you could it might be quite difficult to do, but sum up the key lessons you've learned as a fighter, what would you say they were?
Patience, persistence, and just mental. I'm trying to think of how to say it. Mental stability or mental growth. Like, it's very easy to persuade yourself out of something when things start to hurt that little bit more and injuries take that little bit longer, especially as you get older. And I remember when I first came in, all the guys just hitting 31s, they're like, yeah, man, my body's not the same, and they've all disappeared, and yet they were all talented to keep going. But it's just it's a mental thing. Like, my body, as much as it does take a little bit longer, I just have to do it that little bit more to help heal it. So I just have to be that bit more aggressive on. I go to the cryo, I do the cryo chamber, make sure my body's feeling good. Go to physio, go to specialists. I have to spend a little bit more and do that little bit more to make my body, get my body back to where it needs to be. But the mental side is so important. It's so easy to kind of run with an excuse. And I feel like part of humanity is it's just almost it's survival instinct to pick up those things, to take the shortest, the easiest path. So doing things like this where you have to push your body to this level, is the mental side of it. The amount of times I don't even want to go to training today, and then I end up at training, and just because I know that's just there. My leg's hurting today, I'm just going to stay. No, I'm going to stay home today. Come on, let's go. I can go in and just do upper body, and then all of a sudden, like, when I get warm, my leg's not that bad. So there's so many ways. The mentality for me is the most important.
It's amazing. And every time you win that negotiation with yourself, you build confidence.
You build that training of the mentality, so that becomes shorter. And a lot of the times, it's just the anticipation is way worse than the actual thing. And I always say, even when I was young, going to school, like getting up and having the effort to go to school, it was just like, I don't even want to go to school. I get to school, it was jokes. I loved everybody that was in school. It's like I loved the day. We had so much. There was always something going on. So yeah, it's usually that moment beforehand, in preparation to go there, is when your body or your mind's telling you, nah, just leave it. Oh, nah, let's not do this. And that's what you need to train to be stronger at beating that person.
Yeah. And then when you were saying it gets shorter, it gets to the point where it's not even an option anymore.
Yeah, no, it's just like, yeah, I'm going to training. You just do it.
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. Mate, I could talk to you for hours. We'll get these last three questions in, and I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Thank you.
So the first of these three is there anything you've discovered or come across recently that you're particularly excited about? Personally,
yeah, a couple of new moves actually.
Yeah,
a couple of new moves. I'm more, again, as we've already spoken about how my creative side. I'm always trying new things, and I'll be inspired by movies and stuff, and be like, maybe I can try that. But yeah, we did a couple of new kicks. I kind of want to see it. I've done it to guys while sparring, but it's harder to always transfer it over into the fight. So after the fight, yeah, I'll kind of like say, yeah, it's that one. Yeah, but I got a couple of new moves, and I'm always trying to, be creative with what I'm doing.
That's awesome, mate. I love that. It's like when you even think about extreme sports. I mean, I've put fighting in there to be fair, but snowboard or skateboard and stuff, people like pushing the boundaries and creating new tricks.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
and I think we can become a bit of a stalemate, or we end up just going background and doing the same kind of same things. But yeah, I think it's down to the individual to try some stuff. It might not work. If it doesn't work, obviously you're trying it behind closed doors. Who cares? You know what I mean? It doesn't work. Didn't work. But then you might figure out some gold, and then start using it.
Unreal, man. It's so good. Next one is, if you had to give every listener one habit for them to practice every day that's going to make them better, drive their performance, what would that one habit be?
Any kind of mind drill. I think, no, in fact, you know what? I think the best thing, because this is one of the things that I kind of hate about humanity. I think self-reflection. We spend a lot of time pointing at others and critiquing others and being critical of others. And we don't spend enough time looking in the mirror and being like, actually, I need to do this. And I've especially the last 5 years, and I'm going to give credit to my ex, actually, because it was, and it's usually those kind of strenuous situations or places where that can be strenuous, where, you're actually being forced to look at yourself. Just that habit of having to kind of keep self-reflecting has been amazing for me. Because like, especially in my family, we've got stubborn traits in my family. I think many people do. And relationships in general, and I don't mean like as your partner. I mean, it could be father and son, mother and father. This, that, like whatever. Every relationship is difficult. Friendships, they're difficult, and it's just too easy to just screaming about your side and not taking on the other person's side and then reflecting on that. It's like you can easily understand. Okay, I get what you mean, but this, and we're so focused on what we want to get off our chest. But self-reflecting and being, you know what? And it doesn't mean you have to say it to anybody, but just you pay attention and be like, yeah, you know what? I should have done this. That would have helped that and that. And I feel like you have so much more control over your next scenarios because it's you that you're changing. You can't change anybody else, or it's difficult to change somebody else. And so many opinions out there now, and it's all about changing the other person's opinion. Just focus on self, and it'll be easier for us to kind of move forward and understand each other.
Unreal, man. The concept that our relationships with others are a reflection of our relationship with ourselves.
100%.
So unless we consider that, you're always just taking what they're saying on surface level and not really understanding what they're saying.
I find people don't dig deep enough, and it's sometimes it's an ugly look. Again, it's easy to point the finger, but when you actually look in the mirror, you're like, damn, I don't like the look of myself. So people spend as much time portraying something else, whether it be online, especially nowadays. So painting a picture of themselves that's not real, to push that out to everybody, and ignoring what's actually happening.
Because it's painful, right? It's painful to look at that stuff.
Ugly to look at. And like I said, I've figured out so many ugly truths about myself. But then it's great to overcome them as well. It's kind of like that's almost like another fight in itself. You know, when you have an opponent and you beat that opponent, it feels great. But it's difficult if you don't challenge, if you don't figure out who your opponent is. And a lot of times it's different attributes of yourself.
Yeah, the mirror.
It's the mirror.
Yeah, man. We're going deep right at the end of this chat, mate. So the last one of these is the single trait within you that's allowed you to have the success that you've had.
Single trait. I think being coachable. I think I listen very well. And I take instruction even when I don't. Sometimes I don't agree with it. I'm willing to just do it, just to even if it's a case of just to try and prove them wrong. But I'll do it to their level. And a lot of the times you do it and you're like, I guess that's why you're the coach. So yeah, being coachable, I think has always helped me with a lot of stuff. But with that said, you always have to make sure that the people that are coaching you or mentoring you is the right person as well. So it's hard. But I like the fact that I've been fortunate enough to find some amazing people that I can genuinely just give 100% of myself to, and know that they're not going to take advantage of that. So it's about having balance, because people can be people sometimes and can take advantage, but you have to sort out and look for those right people.
You can bang your head against the wall, but someone next door knows how to get through it.
100%. It's just, especially when we're talking about the kind of motivational side. I know for a fact anytime I'm on a fitness machine and stuff, I can't push myself as hard as somebody else can push me. So I'll go as hard as I think I can go. And then my coach will come stand next to me and start screaming at me. You're like, you're doing whatever you need to do, and all of a sudden you're smashing scores. Having that person behind to give you that extra nudge is definitely important. But obviously, listening and taking it on board is, I think, even more important.
Mike, it's been such a pleasure, man.
Thank you, man. Honestly,
thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I have to have you back on when you got the belt,
man.
mate.
Yeah, definitely. When I get both belts.
When you get both belts. Sorry, when you get both belts. Honestly, mate, that bit at the end when we're talking about, that mirror and everything else, there's so much we could talk about that. So I'd love to, man. Another time.
No, definitely. I'm here, man. Definitely.
Right.
Thank you for coming in, man.
Thanks. Cheers. Nice one, mate.
Nice one.